Hey, this is Michael Lindsay from Vital MX. We're out here at Glen Helen Raceway today for the beginning of our 2024 450 Shootout. As you can see, we have 6 motorcycles here behind me. We have 5 test riders, and per our usual, we're going to give you our honest feedback on all 6 bikes here. Why? Because any 450 is a major purchase, and we want you, the consumer, to be able to find the bike you're looking for. There will be a winner, there will be a loser, but we implore you to listen to every comment throughout this video and even check out the article on our website to make sure you get the best bike for you. Jumping into the results, we have the Husqvarna FC450 taking home 6th place. Now, if you've been watching our shootouts the last couple years, this may not come as much of a surprise. The FC450 has somewhat struggled with our rankings and our test riders the last couple years, and it's due to the one main key feature of the bike, the lowered suspension. Not the fact that it's lowered, but just the overall way the bike acts. We do get the point that the Austrian manufacturer is going for. The lowered suspension does, of course, make it easier to touch the ground. It does give the bike a lowered center of gravity, which in certain turning situations does seem to help. However, the actual suspension setting that goes with that just still doesn't seem to work with a wide range of riders for us. Most of the riders come back with complaints. They aren't super happy with the base setup. They make tweaks, they make the bike stiffer, they raise the sag, they push up the fork height. They pretty much eliminate most of the reasons that it's lowered to just try to get a little bit more comfortable feel. It's just a little bit harsh, feels like it's deep in the stroke, and overall, everybody just kind of tends to struggle with it a little bit. Yes, it has good, broad, linear power. The mapping options are noticeable. It has great brakes. It has quality features about it, but at the end of the day, that lowered setting just doesn't seem to work for a lot of our guys. Again, there is people that this bike works for. I know people that have bought this bike that are happy with it, but it seems to have a little bit of a niche market to go with. Landing in 5th place is the Honda CRF450R. Yes, this is the bike that went perfect season for outdoors this year under Jet Lawrence, and at times we can see why. The Honda still has best-in-class ergonomics. The rider triangle is amazing on this motorcycle, and there are times that you can stand through corners and just do little things that make you feel like Jet Lawrence. But then 3 corners later, you make a mistake. The Honda, when everything is set up perfectly, when you nail the setting, is amazing. The maximum potential of this bike is fantastic, but it is just not the easiest bike to set up out there, and it just seems to change a little bit more track to track. Again, when everything's clicking, most of our test riders have fantastic things to say about this motorcycle, but they all come back saying the same thing. It just doesn't have a wide enough window of operation. It's just not easy enough to set up track to track. Yes, it's fun, but it can also get away from you at times. Again, so the Honda does bring out a lot of fun factor for people. It's just looking at the long term of having the bike. Is it the bike that you want in every situation? Ultimately, that is why the Honda does fall down the rankings or slip to this 5th place that it did earn for the 2024 Shootout. The GasGas MC450 finishes just off the podium in 4th place, and this was one of the more interesting bikes in the test. This is the first year that the GasGas machine has been on the updated chassis that its Austrian brethren that have been on for 2 years, but it does come with its own unique items, a full aluminum subframe, different suspension settings. While the Husky and KTM both have an American setting, the GasGas has a Euro or worldwide setting with it. Its mapping is a little bit different. It has a different handlebar height, rims, clamps, all these little things. And it was a bit contentious with riders. Some people really like the way the GasGas is set up, or they don't. It is softer and more active than the KTM or the Husky, which again, for some guys, it adds more comfort. Add that in with the cast or forged triple clamps and the cheaper, lighter rims, a few of those things. There is more comfort in the GasGas, which some guys appreciate, but some of our faster test riders said that it made the bike just feel a little spongy and wallowy in places. The engine feeling is pretty good on this bike, but without having the airbox lid options or side panel options and the mapping options that we see on the KTM Husky, we're all kind of dialed into just one setting, and guys couldn't move around and maybe get a little bit different power feel that they were looking for. The engine is strong across the range. Again, typical Austrian bike, very broad, very linear, very easy to ride. And again, one of the things the GasGas MC450 had going for it, very easy to ride in choppy, harsh conditions. The bike seemed to settle and flex, but the downside is on some of the bigger hills, some of the bigger ruts, some of the faster guys, just a little too much flex, a little too much vagueness, they said, in the bike, and just continue to move around. So again, a bike that has a lot of positives for guys that like the Austrian style platform but are looking for a lot more comfort. But if you like a lot more of a planted, dead, very solid feel, maybe the GasGas MC450 isn't quite there for you. Taking home third place is the best of the Austrian group. It is the KTM 450 SXF, Mr. Ready to Race themselves. And this bike does pretty much have the best overall feel, again, of the three Austrians. It is a little bit stiffer, a little bit more racier feeling than the GasGas, but compared to years past, they just continue to refine their mapping, refine their suspension settings, and is definitely one of the most comfortable KTM 450s we've ridden. Between the airbox lid options, the mapping options, there's a little bit different ways you can move around the power. Most of the guys end up with the open airbox. We do kind of go back and forth between aggressive and standard mapping. As with any of the Austrian bikes, it has traction control, it has quick shift if you want it, it has those features. But overall, even though this new generation chassis has some contentious feel with guys, it is probably the best it's been so far in total feel. It is a very, again, racy bike, very aggressive in terms of how the chassis responds, how knife edge it is, how much traction it has at times. Still fairly stable, still fairly balanced, and again, it has that very linear character, albeit it has probably the strongest character of the three Austrian bikes overall. It has, at times, again, with the open airbox lid, the more aggressive mapping, the quickest revving character, which is appreciated, because sometimes both the Husqvarna and the GasGas can just feel a little bit too lethargic. The air fork is, again, the best it's ever been, but for some guys, it's still a little bit too vague initially, or still maybe lacks a little bit of the comfort over the two bikes that beat it in this year's shootout. Now that we get into the final two, this is where it gets interesting. Second place went to the all-new Kawasaki KX450. This was a bike we were very curious to see how it did coming into the shootout. If you checked out our initial impressions of the bike, chassis is good. Suspension is a lot better than the outgoing bike, but it is lacking a little bit in overall power output. Still with that, it did end up winning for 2 of our 5 test riders and finished very well across the other 3. And ultimately, the thing that probably did cost it the win is power output. It's overall power output. We are testing at low level, hard packed dirt here on West Coast. The bike could be affected more at elevation in sandier dirt. And that was still, again, the thing that all of our riders were discussing. Does it make enough power for a 450? Does it have enough output? It is a very choked down bike stock. It is very fun to ride because of that, though. It is very easy to get the maximum potential of this new Kawi. It is a very broad character compared to their old bike, which was a lot sharper throttle response initially, but revved out quicker. This is more subdued initially, has a very linear mid-range character, and then it does pull for a pretty long ways for a 450. However, again, some guys are looking more for that torque, a little bit more short shift, a little more pure output, not having to use as much clutch when you bury it. So what are the positives? What got this bike second and even close to the win? The new chassis on the KX450 is phenomenal. It retains all the amazing comfort of the outgoing bike, but it gains so much more front-end feel, so much more turning character. It's so much more planted up front, and they've still matched that with having better suspension settings. The outgoing bike was extremely soft on the front end. It had been for 5 years. They'd never updated that setting. It was very divey, very pitchy style motorcycle. This fork is still maybe a little bit on the soft side. Everybody was going stiffer and then playing with rebound to get a different feel, but it still has a lot more hold up than the outgoing bike. Suspension balance could be a little bit better, but it is in a drastically better world than the outgoing motorcycle. So again, the chassis there, the ergos are really good on the Kawi. The suspension is pretty decent out of the box. It's just output. Some guys were cool with it. Some guys just straight up said it needs more power. Now, the bike in the class that really does not need more power, or it has all the power to give that you can adjust, is, of course, the bike that won. That is, again, the Yamaha YZ450F. This bike won with the majority of our test riders and didn't finish off the podium with any of them, which is just a common theme at this point with Yamaha, whether it's the 250 or the 450 class. This is a bike that wins for some guys, and even if it doesn't, it's just really well-rounded. Admittedly, the latest generation YZ450 chassis isn't as comfortable as their outgoing bike and is maybe not quite as easy to set up, but still, compared to some of its competition, it's extremely comfortable. It's very easy to set up in different ways. You can make it a rear steer bike, a bit of a front steer bike. It definitely has, again, maybe a little bit sharper window to deal with than before. A few guys were chasing balance a little bit, but then you match that with the absolutely excellent suspension, so much comfort with KYB units on this bike, and then that engine, all the output in the world you need. Low, mid, top, short shift it, rev it out. If it's too much, just open up your app, change it, make it mellower, give it less engine braking, etc. The Yamaha just seems to have, again, out of the box, the most options to get riders happy. Even if guys didn't pick it as their favorite bike, whether they preferred a Kawi or an Austrian bike or something of that nature, they still found a lot of things in the Yamaha they liked. And again, that's why Yamaha keeps doing so well in these shootouts. So what's the grand conclusion? Again, as we say every year, there's really not a bad choice in the test. And that's not to downplay who wins or who gets last. It's just an honest opinion. They're all really good dirt bikes. Dirt bikes have come a long ways. They're all 450s. There's a bike in this test for everybody out there. Well, again, the Yamaha 450 one, and we're saying it's the most rounded bike. Who knows? The bike you're looking for might be the Honda. It might be the GasGas. It might be the KTM. It might be any of them. But that's why we say to listen to all the shootout videos, read the articles we post. Again, check that out in the link below for more details from all the test riders, because these are big purchases. These are $9,000, $10,000, coming up on $11,000 motorcycles now. And if you're spending your hard-earned money, you should try to get the bike that's going to suit you, because ultimately when you have the bike that suits you the best, you're going to have the best riding experience. That's why we all ride, right? Because it's fun. So again, check everything out. You might find a bike or test rider's comment that allow you to make that informed decision. But at the same time, again, from the top down, it's really hard to go wrong with any of the bikes that are on the podium in this shootout. And from there on, just look at the attributes and see if it's the bike that you want. If you have any questions, any thoughts, or want any more details on this shootout, any of the bike placements, any of the results, throw them in the comments section below. Give us a like, thumbs up, and subscribe. And thanks for always tuning in at Vital MX.